Welcome to the Jet Fuel Podcast, a Week 2 preseason recap show. I am founder, editor-in-chief of nyjetfuel.com, Matt Barbado, joined by my co-pilots today, Adam Zalonka and Max Marcillo. We have the Jet Fuel three-headed monster in the house to discuss New York's 16-6 Week 2 preseason loss to the Detroit Lions. It was a game I would describe as about as enthralling as watching a cat go to sleep. Would you guys characterize it in the same realm of boringness?
I don't know if I would say a cat going to sleep. I might say watching a cat that's already asleep. Watching the eyelids slowly go down. That's a little too exciting.
Yeah, that's true. You're like, is he going to really fall asleep? Is this the moment he finally passes out?
This was the cat's eyes are closed and it's not moving and it's in a deep sleep. That's how entertaining this game was.
It was a horrible game, and the only thing that made it relatively decent for me was I was watching it poolside in California in wonderful Anaheim at the Disney Grand Californian Hotel. If you guys need a sponsorship, let me know. Appreciate it. Just gave you a great plug there. So, but yes, I was watching it poolside on an iPad. Made it slightly less horrible to watch, but nonetheless, it was a terrible game. The Jets lost 16-6. Christian Hackenberg got the start, was pretty unimpressive, but it wasn't completely his fault. So let's kind of wrap this game up. I know it's a preseason game. It's not something to overreact to, but Adam, what is your primary takeaway from a pretty ugly game, regardless of exhibition or regular season?
Hi, Matt. How's it going?
I'm spectacular, Adam.
Yeah, well, between the two of us, one of us has just spent a weekend vacationing in California at a Disney resort, so that's good. and the rest of us stared at. Well, I know you watched. I would rather watch. I
watched. I did go into the hot tub at halftime, and I missed like the first two plays of the third quarter.
Okay, well, you're very honest about it. I appreciate that. I'd rather watch the Jets when there's something nicer going on, like you had, than what I experienced on Saturday night. But overall takeaway was, it was definitely uglier than the first game. Somehow, because the Jets beat the Titans in week 1, at least in my opinion, or for my case, it instilled a very small fraction of hope in me. Even though that they won the game by a 7-3 score, their offense was anemic under both Hackenberg and Petty, couldn't get in the end zone or near it. But not only did that continue, because McCown didn't play on Saturday against Detroit, Hackenberg looked a little worse. And let's not only focus on the quarterback when we talk about this today. There was a point when Detroit backup quarterback, and man, none of us have ever heard of before, Jake Rudock, was carving up the Jets' first string defense. He was leading Detroit down the field late in the first quarter or possibly early second quarter after he'd replaced Matthew Stafford. And Rudock, and he was leading a pretty, I don't know how many of them were first-string starters alongside Rudock, but there were moments that I had no confidence in what I was seeing on the defensive side. There were some good sacks. There were some good stuffs in the middle. Jamal Adams, we could talk about him. Jamal Adams might be, between the day we drafted him and the middle of this month, he's been the beacon of hope for Jets fans and followers. Of like, well, at least we can watch this rookie be outstanding all season. So when Adams gets critiqued and takes a small step backward in terms of his performance, the way he did on Saturday, that's a concerning sign, because he's sort of the best thing Jets have going for them right now. And yet he forgot to use his arms when he was tackling anybody on Saturday. So that's bad.
All right, but here's the thing, Adam, and look, in regards to Jamal Adams, am I worried? No, not at all. He didn't have a great game by any means, but there were some things that were encouraging, and I'm going to focus on the optimism of Jamal Adams before I go and rip the Jets offense for a little bit. I was watching the game film back and really focusing on Jamal Adams because I saw a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of people were texting me and saying, "Oh, Jamal Adams looked like a bust." Well, first of all, second preseason game. Don't call
No one's calling him a bust. Who's calling him a bust?
Just get that word out of your dictionary until at least year 2 or 3. But anyway, people were upset with, Adams didn't look great. And I will say the big downside to Adams' performance was his tackling. He missed the one bad tackle, that was the wide receiver screen. He grabbed the receiver by the leg. The receiver got away for a 10-yard pickup when it could have and probably should have been a no gain. So that was his worst mistake. He also had another play, I'm not sure if you remember, earlier in the first half, where he got in the backfield. It was a run play. Did a great job of sealing the edge, got his hands on the running back about 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and again, the running back eluded him and got back to the line of scrimmage. Again, that 2 yards, not a huge deal, and I like the way that he sealed the edge. You want him to make the tackle, though. I am not really concerned about Adams because I saw some good things like his ability to seal the edge. I mean, he started that play in the box. He sealed the edge against the tackle very well and forced the running back to go inside. Even with his missed tackle, it was still no gain. So I'm not worried about Adams. He showed some things. He had some tackling mistakes. It's fine. Christian Hackenberg, on the other hand, I mean, there were a lot of factors for his poor performances the last couple of weeks. I don't think he was that bad in week 1. There were some drops. He was also playing against, reserve defenders, whatever. Week 1, that's over. Week 2 was bad. It was a combination of the offensive line, which I thought was a weird mix and match group of starters and competing starters. And I thought that Hackenberg just wasn't aware. That was a criticism of his, a lot coming out of college, that, he didn't have great pocket presence. And if an offensive line collapses, he doesn't know what to do with it. He had one nice scramble. I'll give him that. But there were a couple of plays where, and the one that sticks out in my mind was he took a 3-step drop and did not see his receiver open, hung around the pocket for a second or two before he was sacked. And that's a play where in the NFL, if you have a 3-step drop, and you don't see your number one target, your first read, you got to be able to go either quickly to your second read or throw the ball away. You can't take a sack there. He had some struggles with that. He had, some struggles with accuracy. He missed Robbie Anderson on a deep ball that he should have hit. But you want to nitpick all his throws and all his progressions and all his, being able to step up in the pocket, fine. The simplest stat I can tell you for why Christian Hackenberg has been bad, the drives. The Jets aren't scoring points when he's at quarterback, and points win you games. In his 14 drives since in this preseason, they've been punt, missed field goal, punt, 3 and out, end of half, 3 and out, fumble, and then week 2, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, punt, 3 and out, and then he took a knee before the end of the half. No points. Only a few first downs. That's the biggest area of concern.
Yeah, I think what the problem with Hackenberg was week 1, his stat line was a lot better because the Jets pretty much dumbed down the offense for him. I mean, he was only really – and you can check out my larger evaluation of his week 1 performance on the site, nyjetfield.com. But a lot of it was a lot of first read, a lot of screen passes, a couple dump-offs. The offense was pretty simple, and that was, he didn't really have to do much else but look at his first read. In the second game, they tried to open it up a bit more for him. They gave him the start. They let him play with, the best. What's that?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, it was just the offense was. It wasn't overly complex, but it was slightly, more sophisticated. And you just saw him take just an enormous step back. From a developmental standpoint, this was really concerning to me. I mean, if it wasn't a throw to his first read, he looked just completely lost. He didn't seem to really identify much pre-snap. Seemed like he didn't scan the field quickly enough to really make a play if the first read was taken away. It was just ugly. And I know the offensive line wasn't great, but he got a shot with the starting unit to show what he could do. With a slightly more sophisticated game plan, and he kind of flopped. And this is just, 2 for 6 for 14 yards in an entire half of football. That's pretty terrible. And you could tell the Jets just did not want to take any major chances and ruin his confidence. But that was for anybody, sort of hoping Christian Hackenberg becomes something this year. That was a really, really disappointing performance because just the fact that the Jets tried to sort of elevate the game plan and sort of add some nuances to it, and he completely kind of flopped and looked like a lost puppy at times. That's very concerning developmentally. I don't know how much progress he can make in just one full season. Regardless, I mean, you can't. My biggest takeaway right now is even if Josh McCown gets hurt or he bombs, the Jets have to go to Bryce Petty. They cannot. I mean, Christian Hackenberg simply, and this is sad because I think the whole point of this season is to see what you've got out of Hackenberg. And yes, there are 2 more preseason games. Maybe he can show more improvement. But at this point, I mean, Bryce Petty, at least, he's not spectacular, but at least he looked competent. At least you can trust him to sort of go downfield. I mean, with Hackenberg, everything's sort of a dump off. It seems like if he's forced to look further than 5 yards down the field, he doesn't know what to do. So if you ask me, on August 21st, with a few weeks before week 1, Bryce Petty's got to be the backup. And this is something I thought about writing for Jet Fuel in the coming days maybe. But there's a considerable difference. It's not even as if Hackenberg's playing, with a different set of players and personnel. He was playing with the starters and Petty was playing with the backups. And Petty looked markedly better. So if you ask me, Petty has to be the backup quarterback. Do you guys agree with that? Do you guys think, what's the point? Let's just throw Hackenberg in there at any point, because he just doesn't look ready to go and play an entire game against a starting caliber defense in the NFL. He just doesn't look ready.
I'll jump in there, and I'll say that you're not only did Petty look better on last Saturday, but he has a little bit at least of starting experience from last season. Were those fantastic games? No, they were 9-6 losses to the Rams that were just depressing and hard to watch. But right. He would still make a couple of that 6 points. Don't forget, was not 2 field goals. It was a touchdown that he led the Jets on a touchdown drive. Petty has shown at least that he can handle that, and he did look good. Now he was playing against a second string and third string defense, but he was completing his passes. Those rookie receivers really played a lot more with Petty. And those rookie receivers, Chad Hansen and Ardarius Stewart, are the future, probably, assumedly, of the Jets receiving core. So if Petty's establishing a relationship with those guys, we don't know how good they can be. They haven't really gotten many first-string reps yet. I'll say this about Hackenberg also, something that you mentioned earlier, Matt, about his hit a wall. I'm drawing a blank on what you said about
his development,
his
reading the field,
his development. Yeah, just that this season was supposed to be about evaluating what Hackenberg could give us. If the Jets had a legitimate wide receiver on their team, like somebody named Eric Decker, perhaps, it'd be a little easier to evaluate because you would have a starting receiver on your depth chart. Fighting people on Twitter about, like, when Quincy Enunwa got hurt, some fans are saying, oh, well, at least we'll be able to evaluate everybody else on the roster now. What the hell kind of take is that? Honestly, it's not about that. It's about how are you going to know exactly what you have in Christian Hackenberg if you're throwing him out there with the likes of Robbie Anderson, Sharon Peake, who are not established starters in this league yet. We're not giving you a full lineup of Hall of Fame wide receivers if we're saying Eric Decker and Quincy Enunwa we're going to be catching his balls, but we're running routes and making him a little more comfortable in there. I don't know. I'm ranting a little bit, but I do agree that Petty, despite having no first-team reps all summer in camp or preseason, no first-team reps at all have gone to Bryce Petty, he still would be more sensible number 2 than Christian Hackenberg in case of emergency with regards to Josh McCown. It's not very fair at all. And now the other thing I want to bring up is how Bowles was defensive. This is something I wrote about
I was just going to mention
directly after the game on Saturday night, how Bowles was defensive of Hack in the press conference that he gave directly following the game.
Here's his quote. You got it? Okay.
You got it? Yeah. Well, no, it's okay. I mean, like, I was the one, I was the one that wrote the article.
Take it. Yeah, read it. I didn't know if you had it pulled up.
If you want to read this yourselves, guys, of course, nyjetfuel.com. But Bowles said, no, he really didn't get a chance. It's not a fair evaluation of the kid because he didn't get a chance on the couple of pass plays he had. There was a lot of pressure on him. Was there? Yeah. He was sacked twice. Not the offensive linemen were very subpar. Both of our starting guards were called on holding penalties on the same drive at one point. That doesn't help at all. And he did scramble, like Max mentioned. He had a good scramble up the middle. I think that was the Jets' first down of the game. The very first time that they got one was that scramble. But you know what? For all that, then in that same post I'm referring to on the website, we also embedded our video of Hackenberg throwing the ball directly into the ground in front of him when there was nobody in his face and nobody threatening to sack him or pressure him at all at that play. It's not just about the pressure. And my conclusion is Bowles was being a little defensive of Hackenberg, the way we've sort of seen and contemplated about all summer, that he has, they've set Hackenberg up pretty good at these practices Max has been attending, and I attended a few as well, giving him as many chances as possible. You know what I mean? So even though they have to do that. They have to give him as many chances as possible. But when you surround him with one of the least talented rosters in NFL history, then how are you going to actually properly evaluate it? So
that's exactly
back to the starting point of my rants, because I know I went all over the place in the last 5 minutes.
That's the key. I mean,
yeah.
I think we said this, and didn't we say this on the last show, or didn't I say it on the last show? You're making this whole season about seeing what you have in this kid. And granted, from a developmental, just reading the field, just basic thing standpoint, Christian Hackenberg looked bad. However, you can also throw in the fact that his supporting cast is hot garbage. The Jets' offensive line is terrible. Wasn't it on the first drive where he just got completely pummeled because nobody picked up a blitzing edge rusher, and and then he fumbled and they recovered it?
Yep.
So it's like, I mean, it's just so hard to gauge because I know you were saying obviously they're not surrounding him with a Hall of Fame wide receiver core, but these are the Jets starters. I mean, this is the roster that Mike McCagnon has constructed, and this is why I think we were talking about this, maybe not on a podcast, but I think I was talking about it in our chat group off the air. The Jets they've maybe torn this down too much, because and this is looking way too far ahead. We're not going to go here today, but whether it's Christian Hackenberg, whether it's Sam Darnold, whether it's Josh Rosen, whether it's Josh McCown, whoever is under center for this team is entering an impossible situation, and it won't change that dramatically from in one calendar year, because you can't just blow all your money in free agency the following season. What precedent has Mike McCagnon shown that he can make a complete draft class? He's shown none of that yet. So the Jets have taken this too far, I think. And it's affecting the guy that you need to see something from. So, Max, I'll segue to you, and then we'll move on from the subject, because it's going to be something we are going to talk about probably all year long. Do you agree with Todd Bowles' assessment that it wasn't a fair look? And, is that something that we should maybe just realize is going to be the case this season? Christian Hackenberg's just not going to get a fair shot.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, look, you mentioned his supporting cast. It's not good. The offensive line was not good. Even the guys that, if you're the Jets, you expect to be good. And, looking at Brian Winters and James Carpenter, the two guards, you mentioned they both got called for penalties. And that drive was Hackenberg's probably best chance to put some points on the board. The Jets had the ball at the 50-yard line. And, theoretically, you need, 12, 13 yards, probably one first down before you're in field goal range. And the Jets ended up going back 20 yards and because of the two penalties. So, I mean, it's yes and no. It's not a fair assessment of him because the team around him is not good. But also you would like to see him mechanically and with his progressions improve, not spike the ball into the ground and take a sack on a 3-step drop. Look, it's the second preseason game. There's still a lot, for Hackenberg to show. Also keep in mind, because Todd Bowles and the Jets have said that they want competition at all the offensive line positions, there were 3 players on that line who may not be starters week 1. I don't think that really would have changed Hackenberg's performance, but it's worth noting. I think week 3 against the Giants is, I hate to use the word big in preseason because nothing really is that important in preseason, but it kind of is for Christian Hackenberg. Look, he had a very mediocre first game in a very vanilla offense. He had a pretty bad second game, and this is a good opportunity against a good defense. The starters usually play the majority of the third preseason game. People call it the dress rehearsal. So I'm interested to see if Hackenberg starts or if they throw McCown in for, a couple possessions and then go to Hackenberg when the Giants still have their first team defense in. The Jets still have like Robbie Anderson and guys like that in. That's what I'm interested to see. But, I mean, I can't say entirely that it's not his fault. He did not look good.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point about the Giants game, I don't know if that's going to be a proper chance for Hackenberg to show what he can do unless they limit Josh McCown's time, because you didn't play him in the second game. We don't know why they didn't play him in the second game, other than he's probably going to be the starter. But you would assume McCown would get the first 3 quarters of that game, or somewhere in the range of that. Maybe not the entire third quarter, but he'll play at least a half. So does that give you an accurate enough depict, is that going to give you enough of a sample size for Hackenberg? And he's probably not going to play against starting defenders, so I don't know. That's a perfect segue to our next topic, though. Todd Bowles is playing a bit of a mystery game with us, and it's probably the worst kept secret in America. He refuses to name a starting quarterback as if it's some mystery. And Adam, I believe you wrote about this on Monday, which is today, but just wanted, in case you're listening a little bit later. You wrote about this, how Bowles plans to announce a starting quarterback by next week. And my question for you, Adam, is, wait, what's there to announce? How is it not Josh McCown? Is there any conceivable way you could see someone not named Josh McCown being named the starting quarterback when Todd Bowles makes this illustrious announcement that everybody knows the answer to? I mean, just take the wheel, man. Take the wheel. Why are they being so coy about this?
Well,
what's there to hide? What's there to hide? There's nothing to hide.
Matt.
There's nothing.
I have a good answer for your question. There's 2 problems. One is, why is Todd Bowles being so coy about this? It's just his personality. He doesn't like to say more than 7 words at a time, and he doesn't have to. And I listened to him on Mike Francesa this afternoon, doing an interview on WFAN, and it was funny. I didn't put this in the article, but it was funny how Todd Bowles was saying, Francesa was telling him, you gotta reveal a little more of your personality, be a little more personable, because people don't realize that when you're off the air, you've got multifaceted personality. And Bowles said essentially. Yeah, but what the reply from Bowles was when they ask me a football question, I give them a football answer. When they ask me a gossip question, I don't answer gossip questions. If they want to take me to a comedy club, then I'll laugh. And if they want to take me to a concert, then I'll sing. I should have really transcribed that because it was actually pretty gold. That's one side of the answer. We have to get
Todd Bowles to a concert.
Yeah. But I'm glad I just rattled that off from memory. It was 7 hours ago.
That's great.
To answer your question, in what conceivable way is the answer next week not Josh McCown? The best answer I can give you is if Todd Bowles pulls a Rex Ryan and throws McCown behind a third-string offensive line in the fourth quarter of the Giants game and McCown breaks his leg, then the answer is not Josh McCown. That's really my only answer is if McCown gets injured between now and then the answer will be somebody else. But no, of course it's Josh McCown. There's
Max?
Yeah, go ahead.
The bigger – there are 2 questions that I care more about than who will be the Jets starter week 1. Who will be the Jets backup? That's actually interesting. What would happen if McCown, the starter, got hurt in week 1? And the other thing is I actually want to know who's going to start week 3 of the preseason, because that is interesting because it'll tell if the Jets are trying to give Hackenberg another shot at playing with the starters. But the bottom line is this. It's probably going to be McCown week 3. It's definitely going to be McCown week 1 of the regular season. There's no way around it. Hackenberg is not ready to be thrown in the fire with this bad offense on a bad team. Bryce Petty, I mean, I guess I think he would start as the backup. I think that would be the best choice for the Jets just because he has in-game experience, regular season game experience. If McCown got hurt, you wouldn't want to throw Hackenberg in there when he's not ready, coming random week or random play of a random week, just throw him in. I do think the Jets have a plan. I do think they want Hackenberg, to come at some point of the season. I've been saying this all off season, to come in and be the starter, whether it's for the final 8 games or final 6 games or final 10 games, whatever. They want Hackenberg to come, but I think it'll be McCown with Petty to back him up until Hackenberg gets that chance.
Let's not forget and not underestimate the fact that all last season, the Jets, with the same general manager, coach, and a lot of the same coaches in place, they did everything they could to not let Christian Hackenberg even dress for a game. They had 4 quarterbacks instead of 3 at the time, even though they eventually got decimated by injuries. But Hackenberg didn't even dress till week 17. And if you remember, everybody sort of took that as this doom sort of sign that, oh, God, how bad is he really? We're seeing so much more of Hack this year than last year, which leads me to believe essentially what Max just said. There is a plan in place, and they definitely see Hackenberg as a long-term project, which makes it more likely for them to decide he'll be number 3 on the depth chart come week 1 than number 2. So I'm with you there. Petty has more regular season experience. It's not very good experience, but when you compare McCown to Petty and take Hack out of the picture, McCown versus Petty, I mean, that's no contest, especially when you consider McCown has gotten all of the first-team reps compared to Petty anyway in preseason, not just preseason, but throughout training camp. Throughout camp, Petty's not taken a single snap with the first team as far as any of us have seen. So we know that's why we know it's McCown.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't necessarily hate what I saw from Petty on Saturday either. I mean, he completed 15 of 24 passes, 160 yards. He threw that late touchdown at the end, or interception at the end that was, just in the end zone, an end zone heave. But I didn't hate what I saw from him. And maybe it's just because I was coming off of watching Hackenberg and need to adjust my eyes. Because, but I didn't hate and it sort of got me thinking just in this segment, maybe he's a guy who's never going to really start many games for you, but maybe he can be a nice career backup for you. Because I didn't hate what I saw from him, and I don't think he was absolutely horrid when he started last year. But I think he has to be the number 2. Let's talk briefly about some other competitions before we go into the annual Snoopy Bowl. Bowles also mentioned that both starting offensive tackle and the starting center positions are still up in the air. So, Kelvin Beachum, Ben Aguilana, Brent Quale, who am I forgetting about? Brandon Shell, and then Wesley Johnson and Jonathan Harrison. Those competitions are still pretty cutthroat, and you could tell the Jets' offensive line is sort of in flux. Nobody's really winning those jobs. I mean, they both, from what I saw, and it was obviously, again, I was watching it poolside on an iPad, so I didn't get to really dig into it too much. But the offensive line was pretty lousy, and I thought both offensive tackle spots were pretty shoddy all game. So what do you guys make of that, especially a tackle? Because they kind of gave Kelvin Beachum a pretty hefty contract to presumably be the starting left tackle. So, Max, why don't you start this off? What do you make of that?
I think left tackle and center are pretty much Beachum and Johnson's jobs to lose, respectively. I think the Jets were giving Aguilana and Harrison a chance. I think those are the 2 most likely reserves to make the roster, and actually, especially since they got a start, I think they're almost locks to be one of the 8 or 9 offensive linemen the Jets usually keep. But I don't think they're starter level just yet. I think Aguilana is better than Harrison just because he has experience. But again, the Jets gave the money to Beachum. Beachum has the most experience, and I think Beachum and Johnson have those 2 jobs wrapped up. Now, the thing with right tackle that's a bit interesting is that the Jets aren't just getting a look at Quale and Shell at right tackle. If you remember, at a point in week 2, the Jets actually lined both of them up on the right side, had Quale at right guard and Shell at right tackle.
Oh, baby.
I think that's how you really know that the Jets are really interested in getting a look at the guys, not just how they play in that position, not just how they play with the starters, but also how they are as linemen, how they pick up schemes. And I think that competition is the only one that could really go either way. And I think Brandon Shell wins the battle. I think Brandon Shell is the week 1 right tackle. I was a bit skeptical of him. I liked him a lot. I thought he was very, very good at the end of the regular season, and we all have heard it. We all saw, the Pro Football Focus grades for him were outstanding. He didn't allow a single pass rush. We all knew that. But the big question was, well, it's a small sample size. I mean, D. Milliner won Defensive Rookie of the Month in December of his first year. I mean, small sample size, guys. Geno Smith had a 158.3 passer rating against Miami.
Oh,
and
man.
what was that, first year, second year? Look,
Yeah, in the last
small
week of the
sample
season.
size, small
Yeah,
sample
baby.
size, small
Max
sample
is ripping
size.
out these
But
examples.
at least Brandon Shell has showed something in the preseason. I think the one sack, the first sack of the game in week 2, I don't think that was Brandon Shell's fault. The guy came untouched. I think that was a situation where maybe Bilal Powell was supposed to pick him up. I'm not exactly sure, but I do think Brandon Shell, for the most part, has been the better right tackle than Quale. I think the left tackle and center jobs, they're decided. It's going to be Beacham and Johnson. I think right tackle is still up for grabs. I think Shell ultimately wins it. Again, it'll be interesting to see who the Jets line up against the Giants on Saturday.
Yeah, it should be an interesting competition. Again, something to watch for. I mean, listen, it's good to have competition across the field, but it gets to the point where it's okay, it's not competition because anybody's really overwhelmingly good. It's competition. It's not because you have a ton of depth. It's because you kind of don't know what you have at all. So I was trying to look up, advanced stats on the offensive line from Pro Football Focus. I don't think they have preseason stats up, but no, it was just, again, it comes back to Hackenberg struggling, but it wasn't pretty. And the offensive line and the wide receivers are going to be 2 spots I'm going to be watching in the annual Snoopy Bowl. And let's wrap up the show with that. The Jets-Giants, Saturday night, under the lights at MetLife Stadium for the illustrious Snoopy Trophy. Did they not even give it out anymore? I don't think they gave it out last year. I don't know why, but if they do, whether they do or don't, the Snoopy Bowl always matters because it's that all-important third preseason game. So, Adam, who is one player you are going to be honing in on offense and defense, who you want to see step it up in the Snoopy Bowl?
Well, it's a really good question. I was thinking about offense, and we need to see a little more about Sharon Peak, in my opinion. I want to see exactly who's going to be the number 2 wide receiver for the first month of this season when Jalen Marshall is suspended. We have not seen much at all from the rookies, as I mentioned earlier. Stewart and Hansen really get into the second halves of these games and are not. I mean, they're getting targeted in the second half, but they're not necessarily. But from what we can glean from the team, they may not be ready to start yet. And so what does that leave us? Opposite Robbie Anderson, with Jalen Marshall suspended, is Sharon Peak ready to be on the field for however many plays a game that might really entail? I want to see if he can make a couple plays against the Giants in the first half this week. We haven't, to my knowledge, he scored in the first game against Tennessee. He's scored the only touchdown this year for the Jets, but that was a 4-yard really quick dump pass in the red zone for a touchdown. So my point is I would like to see Peak impress us a little more. 4-yard touchdown you're supposed to catch. I want to see something impressive from him. On the defensive side of things, I think I will pick Morris Claiborne because he's supposed to be the number 1 Jets cornerback, right? But he did not look good at all on on last Saturday night, just as so many other Jets were not performing to their potential. Claiborne didn't have a great game, and maybe he won't have to face Odell Beckham Jr. next week because of the sprained ankle he suffered like an hour ago in the preseason game.
Breaking news on the Jet Fuel podcast.
Breaking news, yeah. Odell Beckham sprained his ankle because Dumb Brown hit him really poorly.
I wouldn't say Dumb Brown. I would say dumb preseason football, but anyway.
Yeah. But whoever Claiborne has to cover, my point is that Morris Claiborne, I don't want to see this become a D. Milliner situation or a very old Darrelle Revis situation where the Jets are relying on a number 1 cornerback who can't cover a number 1 wide receiver. So I would like to see what Claiborne can do on Saturday. Those are my guys.
Max, what do you got?
So I could go with the cop-out answer and go, the quarterbacks.
You can't say Christian Hackenberg.
I could do that. Then I really
good rule.
want to.
No, just implemented it.
I really want to, but I'm not. I promise you, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Cop
out Marcella.
What I do want to ask is it still a cop-out answer to pick a special teamer who can score points?
No, I don't think that's a cop out at all because it's not Christian Hackenberg. That was
Well,
the
there we
cop out. That
go.
was the easy answer.
That
So
that's
I
returner.
my
thought one of the rules was one offensive
that
player, one defensive player.
yeah, that's my offensive but not really offensive player to watch because he's capable of scoring points. I'm gonna go with Frankie Hammond or Marcus Murphy or one of the Jets kick returners.
That is a cop out. You're saying like all of them. You're saying that entire unit, aren't you?
Cop out Marcilla.
Can I just say special teams instead of offense? No, fine.
He just doesn't want to comply to any rules.
All right, yeah, I just give up on the rules.
Frankie
Offense,
Hammond's-
you guys want offense, you guys don't want quarterback, fine. I mean, let's go Robbie Anderson. I think he's had a pretty nice preseason, but of course, he looked good week 1 when McCown was under center. Week 2 with Hackenberg, he didn't get many opportunities to catch the ball. I would like to see Robbie Anderson step up and be that number 1 wide receiver. I think he's ran some really nice routes down the field. We know he's capable of doing that, and if he keeps doing that, that's great for the Jets. He ran a beautiful route downfield that McCown hit him in stride in week 1. He had one that would have been a 70-yard touchdown had Hackenberg hit him in week 2. I'd like to see him continue to stretch the field for the Jets offense, but also work inside, work on slants, work on, crossing routes. I'd like to see him do that. But also, just a special shout out, please, special teamers, I want that to be my real answer. Just no. Ross Martin, I'll throw you in the mix. Chandler Catanzaro, the kickers, the kick returners, Tanner Purdom, you got it. I want to see the special teams unit do well. Defensive.
Okay, you don't give a defensive guy because you just named 6 players on the team. So
you're not sick of me by now?
Who's your defensive guy? But you can't elaborate as to why.
Jamal Adams.
Okay, that's a cop-out answer because he's the top rookie draft pick. So in reverting from your cop-out answer, you stole my answer. It was going to be Robbie Anderson. I was going to ask this. Did Chandler Catanzaro get cut while I was in California? Because he didn't attempt to kick Saturday night. It was all Ross Martin, 2 for 3. So that's a good – I want to see if Martin's the place kicker and whether they kick a PAT or attempt a field goal. If he's the first guy out there, that might give you an indication of where the Jets are going in that competition. Marcus Murphy, to sort of react to Max's suggestion, didn't really show me much. I wasn't really impressed. I think he fumbled at least once. Wasn't really great on punts. Averaged 23.7 yards per kick return on 3 returns. So, again, nothing really. I remember watching him in Missouri, and he was an electric playmaker, but just, I don't know, didn't really kill me as the return man Saturday night. A quick note, since Max already sort of talked about Robbie Anderson and Adam already talked about Sharon Peak, those two and Austin Seferian-Jenkins were all blanked on Saturday night, which is very interesting. They only got a target apiece, but still, I mean,
yeah, that's part of it because they only played with Hack. They didn't play with Petty for the most part, so that's why they only got targeted a tiny bit. When you only have 6 attempts, so it gets you complete.
So just playing with Hackenberg certainly didn't help. So I'll go with another offensive player who actually had a pretty decent game. I'll go with Jordan Leggett, the rookie tight end. 2 catches for 40 yards in the second game of the preseason. He's probably in line to get the starting job with Seferian-Jenkins facing a 2-game suspension. I want to see what he can do as a starter. I don't know how much the Jets will play Seferian-Jenkins since he's missing the first 2 games. I'm guessing he'll probably get the starting nod, but I hope Leggett gets an extended look. He's somebody I'm going to keep an eye on offensively. Defensively, this isn't my player, but it's my soap opera to watch. I want to see tries to take Brandon Marshall's head off in this game. And if I'm the Giants, I would not even play Brandon Marshall in this game because this has been the whole offseason saga. Go ahead.
Matt, so sorry because we brought up OBJ's injury earlier. Breaking news, part 2 of the Giants' injury woes. Brandon Marshall is getting X-ray on his shoulders since the beginning of the podcast. Marshall got hurt in the Giants-Browns game. So what you're talking about now might be moot altogether because Marshall might be injured.
Wow.
This? I was just looking at these tweets while you were talking, and then when you brought Marshall up, I said, I got to interrupt now.
Holy cow. Okay, it looks like the Brandon Marshall-Sheldon Richardson soap opera could be – if Marshall plays, then Richardson can go for the shoulder. So, wow.
Seriously? Oh, my God.
Okay. Well, that soap opera might be cooked. So I'll move on to my player to watch defensively. It's not a player per se; it's a position. I want to see who emerges at that number 2 cornerback spot.
So that's a cop-out answer.
No, because
like
I didn't just
say who's going to be returner.
Okay, I'll hone it down even more. I'll say Justin Burris.
There you
He
go.
lined
Nice.
up.
Okay.
But it's such a rotating door. You don't know who's going to start at the number 2 corner opposite Claiborne. We've talked about Claiborne. Didn't look like a top number 1 corner on Saturday. Justin Burris didn't really look like much of a number 2 corner on Saturday. I noticed he was picked on quite a bit early on. Stafford was throwing his way a lot and successfully. I'd like to see if he maybe emerges as a decent option. We really haven't seen much of Marcus Williams with the starters. I think I'm starting to look pretty right on that prediction that he's not a very great cornerback. And then you've got the other guys. You got Darryl Roberts. Does Dex McDougal cement himself on the roster with a strong performance? Who knows? He's been sort of quietly playing well during the preseason. I want to see who really comes out of that number 2 cornerback spot. I'd assume Burris will get the starting nod on Saturday, and that could be against, Brandon Marshall, could be against Sterling Shepard. Is he healthy? Are all 3 of the Giants receivers currently hurt? I don't know if Shepard ever came back from that.
I think Sterling Shepard had a catch earlier. I had the first quarter of the game on before we started.
Okay, so he's back. Okay.
But, the rate things are going, let's not jinx it for the Giants' sake. We don't wish ill will of them after the preseason face-off, I think. At this rate, Shepard's probably going to get hurt before we stop podcasting.
Yeah, and of course, a good test for the Jets secondary. The Giants probably won't risk Odell or Brandon Marshall in that game because of their injuries they're dealing with now. So that's wonderful. So the Jets will be going up against like Roger Lewis and Sterling Shepard. So, if they look really locked down on Saturday, it's because the Giants' top 2 or 3 guys aren't even playing. So that's a wonderful, litmus test. But yeah, either way, I'd like to see what these number 2 cornerbacks can do. I'd like to see who ends up sort of solidifying that spot, because while no roster cuts have been made yet, other than, swapping players in and out, this will be the last chance to really sort of get a look at what the depth chart could be. We'll see if that changes with the new way of cutting players, where you can just cut it from 90 to 53 by September 2nd. But that's what I'd look at. I'm going to go with Jordan Leggett, and I guess I'll go Justin Burris, since I don't want to sound like cop-out Marcillo over there.
But see, here's the interesting thing, and look, call it a cop-out, call it whatever, but it is what the Jets are actually going for. A lot of competition at a lot of positions. You look at the starting 22 jobs, and, maybe 10 of them are rotated. You get outside linebacker, cornerback, 3 spots on the offensive line. Who's going to be the number 2 receiver? Who's going to be the number 2 cornerback? Who's going to be the tight end? There's a lot of competition, Forte versus Powell, and obviously the very secretive but not so secretive quarterback competition. That's what the Jets are going for. It's a lot of competition. It's a lot of 1A and 1B at a lot of different positions. Call it a cop-out answer or whatever you like, but at least the preseason has been kind of entertaining as far as that.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like the Jets' competition, and I'm using air quotes when I say competition. It's the same principle as, you're driving on the highway, you really got to go to the bathroom, and it's between a gas station bathroom and a McDonald's bathroom. Which one do you choose? It's like they're all kind of lousy, you're going to have to, kind of get out of there as quick as you can options. It's just not pretty. It's not enjoyable. It's competition, but it's, the difference between who's kind of the least bad at this point with this roster, especially at positions like offensive line and wide receiver. So I'll end this podcast on a really, really depressing and sort of somber tone. But this has been a really, really good episode. It's been great talking to you guys again after my little hiatus in the West Coast. Be sure to follow the other 2 members of the Jet Fuel 3-Headed Monster. You can follow Adam Zalonka on Twitter at Adam_Zalonka. You can follow Max at CopOutMarcilla. No, I'm kidding. At MMarcilla98. Feel free to let him know he's a cop-out too. That's fine. Let's get hashtag CopOutMarcilla trending. And if you want to follow me on Twitter at RealMattBarbado, and follow the site at New York Jet Fuel. Be sure to check out nyjetfuel.com for plenty of preview and analysis of the Snoopy Bowl. You really know football season's back when it's time for the Snoopy Bowl. So get excited, and we hope you will join us along the way for the rest of the preseason. And we want to thank you very much for listening to the Jet Fuel Podcast.